Life in Sierra Leone before things changed because of the war was very simple and remarkable. I grew up in a very remote part of the country, in the south, and I grew up in a village, and then my family lived in a town, which were all very small. And so my life revolved very much around community. And so my life revolved around the oral tradition school, which is more the British model. I didn't have electricity or tap water. This was pretty much my life, very simple, going to school, playing football, going to swim in the river, and I was very much in touch with the land and nature and all of that. Eventually the war reached my part of the country when I was 12 years old. That's really when the war reached my part of the country. This was in 1993. And everything I knew as a kid began to change. I started running from the war constantly, and between 12 and 13, everything that I had known as a child changed tremendously. I lost my family in the war. My immediate family was killed in the war, so I became the only survivor of, my mother, father, and two brothers were killed in the war. But this happened to hundreds and thousands of other young people in Sierra Leone as well. And I ended up going to a military base, looking for safety, which is where I was forced into the fighting. So at 13, I began to fight as a child soldier. And my role changed from somebody who had been experiencing the violence to now really bringing the aggression itself to people. My life was in that madness for close to 3 years, and I was removed from the war through the help of various United Nations organizations who had gone into the country. And to cut a long story short, I went through rehabilitation and eventually was taken into a family here in the United States, and I was brought to New York. I felt that people didn't know where I was coming from. People had no idea about the part of the world that I was coming from, even though the war had been going on for more than 8 years. It was not big, it was nowhere in the news in the United States. Later on, CNN presented it as this new thing going on in Sierra Leone, but it had already been going on for 7-8 years, So it was, I think the activism came out of that frustration that people didn't know about my country. People had no, and when people learned about my country, there was no context, because their introduction to it was through the violence that had been presented to them because of the war. Nobody knew that I grew up in Sierra Leone, where I went to school, learned Shakespeare, learned American hip-hop. That context wasn't there. It was only, oh, another African country that's mad. And so people did not understand our humanity, and people did not understand that there is nowhere in the world where people wake up one morning and just decide to shoot each other. There are circumstances that lead to it, but oftentimes the way the media presents it, because there's no interest in any country until there's something bad, seems that there's always been a war. So because of all of these frustrations, I began to actively speak about my experience, about my people, about my culture, about my country. And then when I went to university, of course, I studied political science, and it heightened that drive, and I did more and more of it at the United Nations and various other places. For me, being an activist is something that I guess that title I've discovered by living here in the West, but for me, I would say more I'm somebody who cares about the human condition and humanity in a way, particularly the issues that had affected me as a child growing up. And my activism is really to make sure that what has affected me in my life does not continue to affect other people in the world. And I feel that I'm in a position to do something about it. I was particularly in a position, and still am, to put a human face to an experience that may be so removed from people who may lived in the United States or in Europe. And sometimes when people hear about such things, it seems so far away. So I wanted to put a human face to it, to understand the complexities of it, but also the possibility that people can come out of it. So for me, activism is really, I believe that each human being must use their life for the benefit of others, not only for yourself.